Hi, this is Jeff Keamy, and today we're going to talk about the initial steps to an installation. So when I first show up at a property, we've got our contract signed, we have an installation date scheduled. I think it's important to schedule at least a ballpark on the installation. We're going to check in with the property owners or management on site. I think that's always important so they know that you're there. They know that there's not just some random guy on a ladder installing Wi-Fi. They know that you're there installing the equipment. We're going to confirm or redetermine the location of the network room next. Now, many times I'll walk in, and when we're pitching the Wi-Fi service, I will build the network in my mind, what I think is the most ideal setting. A lot of times I'll write this on paper, that way I can reference it later. I highly recommend that initially on your first sales attempts, that you really kind of figure out what you think the ideal network might be there. Not just ideal in the sense of it operating perfectly, but ideal in making sure that the costs make sense, both for you and for the potential client. Now, what I'm trying to get at is, as I'm there during the first day of installation, sometimes that plan changes, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll find that it's much smarter to run wire another direction. And for instance, one reason may be that you're saving wire. So initially you said, okay, we're going to run it this way. We're going to go left, right. We're going to go down this hallway, and we're going to put the access point there. And we find out that that takes, let's just say 200 feet of wire. But we look and say, hey, there's another path that we can use, and that only takes 95 feet of wire, and that's a much better path, both to ensure the proper voltage gets there, and on a cost level, you're saving yourself some wire. So definitely determine that network room initially when you get there, and make sure that it still makes sense. It's okay to change the plan here, but if you do change the plan, make sure you document that on paper, something that you can have reference to during the installation. The next thing you really want to make sure is the wire paths to all your access points. So now that you've got your network room defined, you need to make sure that your wire paths make sense. You do have a limit to how far you can run your wire. The Cat5 wire will typically start to degrade after about 100 meters. So if you have a 100-meter run, that's a very long run. You want to make sure that makes sense for what you're doing. And if you're running that and you've decided, yes, I'm going to go ahead and go with that run, you need to make sure that the proper voltage is coming out at the end, and it's sustaining that voltage over the long term, or else that's going to cause problems with your access points. So those are going to be some of the really big deals that you have to consider when you're there on your first day. Next is, once you start, you've got everything figured out, you know it's going to work, you're happy with what you've decided upon, you're going to start running that wire, but you're going to want to make sure that every bit of wire is labeled. So for instance, if you're running a wire that's going to go to unit 35, and there's going to be an access point maybe in front of that apartment unit or hospitality unit, you want to label that wire with like a 35 or something that designates where this wire is actually going, because as you're running 5, 6, 10, a dozen wires throughout a property, it's going to start get confusing with all the wires that you have. But if you've labeled every single one of your runs on both ends, you know exactly where that wire has gone to. So there's no guesswork once you've got your bunch of wires and you see everything properly labeled. So this is Jeff Keamy. We're teaching you the initial steps to installation to ensure that you've checked in, to ensure that you've really made sure that the network room is in the proper location, that you have access to it. Maybe after hours is going to give you an idea of where you want that. You want to define your wire paths, and you also want to make sure that you wire every single one of your wires to ensure that nothing gets lost during the installation.